Well, our U.S. correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease joins us now for the latest developments, of course, after U.S. presidents tweeted about South Africa's land debate. Sherwin, good afternoon to you. Thank you so much indeed for coming through. A very massive reaction here at home. Politicians, ordinary South Africans, of course, responding to the tweet. But most importantly, analysts applauding the way the South African government responded, saying that it was a very mature response.
Well, I don't think South Africa should feel exceptional in this sense, in terms of being named in a tweet by Donald Trump. I think if we were to consult the Chinese or the North Koreans or the South Koreans or the European Union or the Canadians, and the list goes on, they have felt the ire of this president sitting on a couch watching television and then tweeting about international diplomacy and policy. And I think this is the lesson to South Africans today, is what journalists and public opinion and analysts have been dealing with for the last 2 years, as a president that has not educated himself on the nitty-gritty of the policy, but chooses to watch a conservative right-wing channel called Fox News, and then to tweet and to admonish or to instruct senior officials in his administration to tackle certain issues that he's just watched, given a very conservative slant on television. The point here, and this should not be lost on anyone, is that the State Department is in fact quoted in the Fox News piece as saying that South Africa is going through a process, an open, transparent process. It refers to resilient institutions, that it is a strong democracy, and says that this is being handled within the rule of law, quoting the South African government's position, certainly what we've heard from Cyril Ramaphosa time and time again. The president then ignores the statement of the State Department and then goes on and says, I've instructed the very State Department that has just been quoted in the Fox News piece to go and do something that they've already done. So really, this is, South Africans shouldn't really feel too exceptional in the sense this has happened to many countries and who tend to then approach or the response through diplomatic channels, as Minister Lindiwe Sisulu is doing right now.
Yes, and of course, this comes just hours after President Cyril Ramaphosa was answering questions in Parliament yesterday, clarifying this issue. And many people are worried about the relations between South Africa and the U.S. Going forward. We do know that the U.S. is our third trading partner after China and Germany. So is there a need to worry going forward?
There's been tension between the relationship between South Africa and the United States for some time. I mean, the history of the United States and the history of the struggle in South Africa were not two equal visions at the same time. There were there was a great deal of angst and anxiety in the relationship for the longest time. I remember being at the State Department when Maite Nkoana Mashabane was welcomed by John Kerry, and my question to both of them was, how do we explain the tensions we are seeing in this relationship to our audiences back home? And they said friends are allowed to disagree. And I think you're going to hear more of that as the State Department now quells the tweet that President Donald Trump has sent out. I will just quote the former United States ambassador to South Africa, Palesa, Patrick Gaspard, taking to Twitter, of course, an Obama appointee. Quote, the President of the United States needs political distractions to turn our gaze away from the criminal cabal. And so he's attacking South Africa with the disproven racial myth of large-scale killings of farmers. This man has never visited the continent and has no discernible Africa policy. So some firm rebukes coming from, the former ambassador to South Africa, Patrick Gaspard, and really speaking to what is ongoing on the domestic front in the United States. South Africans and people around the world should not lose sight of the fact that the president has had a very bad news week in terms of two of his associates that have appeared in court. One has been found guilty on 8 counts of bank and tax evasion fraud, and his former fixer Michael Cohen, his personal attorney, implicating the president in illegal conduct as it relates to campaign finance violations. So this has not been a good week for the president in terms of news on the domestic front. So this type of tweet is very much meant for people who watch Fox News and certainly people that are critical to Republicans retaining Congress in the midterm elections in November.
Yeah, and of course, some South Africans saying they're not entirely surprised by this tweet for the mere fact that AfriForum had actually taken a tour to the U.S. earlier this week, garnering support, in relation to this land issue.
Absolutely. AfriForum, let's not forget, were on a multi-state tour in the United States earlier this year. Their deputy CEO, Ernst Rutz, appeared on the very same Tucker Carlson show, the show that had this report last night, talking about his book, Kill the Boer, in which he basically says that the South African government is complicit in the killing of farmers in that country. So, this has been a long, slow-moving train in terms of AfriForum's impact. In terms of their outreach in the United States, they met with conservative think tanks, the Cato Institute, the Heritage Foundation. They met with the staff of certain United States senators, I understand, including the Senator of Texas, Ted Cruz. So it might not have gotten the huge kind of reaction. It certainly hasn't got a huge media reaction in the United States to this very day. But the president tweeting about what probably would have been a forgotten Fox report, that has shone a light on this issue, and hence you now see a diplomatic kerfuffle happening around the world in terms of how we respond to it.
Yeah, certainly. And of course, earlier on, we've seen the rand weakening against the dollar after this tweet, weakening by as much as 1.7%. We've also had the Minister of International Relations, Lindiwe Sisulu, saying that the tweet is unfortunate, but of course, she will engage the U.S. Embassy. So I suppose, Sherwin, it's a matter of waiting and see what happens going forward.
Palesa, there are certainly implications when the United States president tweets, and this is why so many people within his party, outside of the Republican Party, have urged the president to tweet less. The president also, just a short time ago, tweeted about how, or was quoted in saying that the New York Stock Exchange, the stock market would essentially crash if he was impeached. I mean, these are the kinds of things that this president has become known for, shooting from the hip. An idea lands and he shares it with his millions of followers. And I think given his position and the responsibility that comes with such a position, he perhaps should be a little bit more careful in what he says in such an open platform.
All right, Sherwin, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for coming through, our U.S. correspondent, Sherwin Bryce-Pease. All right, let's stay now with issues around land.